I think this is our final video on Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. I have spent a lot of time with this adventure now. You can see my original review in the eye up there. Ultimately, this is not really an adventure aimed at me, but that's okay. This is aimed squarely at newer DMs and gaming groups that are looking for a classic dungeon crawling D&D experience. I think especially aimed at folks who have been introduced to D&D through Baldur's Gate 3 and are ready to graduate to the real thing. And for those types of groups, I think this is a great, straightforward adventure that isn't going to overly tax a new DM. If you're planning to play Phandelver and Below and you want to make the experience both extra special for your group and easier for you to run, then this is the box for you. The Beadle and Grimm's boxes contain DM tools, reference cards, artwork, minis, new encounters to enhance the adventure, a DM screen tailored to the adventure, really cool in-world documents to hand out to your players, and much more. The boxes can be expensive though, so I recommend approaching them as group purchases, but we're going to talk about that at the end. First of all, many thanks to Beadle and Grimm's for providing me for this set to review with you. We are going to go through the whole box and see what this set has to enhance your campaigns. So, settle in as we do a deep dive into Beadle and Grimm's legendary edition of Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. You ever just want to pull out your phone and be playing RPGs like Pathfinder with your friends? Tabletop Town brings that asynchronous play to your fingertips in a beautiful streamlined package with all the bells and whistles. Play great indie RPGs like Honey Heist, Moonlight on Rose Hill Beach, or big games like Pathfinder 2nd Edition with the newly released remastered rules. Character sheets, dice, the official rules, images, and chat are baked right in. You can even specify with a tap if you are chatting in or out of character. The app is free to use with optional purchases of official rules systems. Stop worrying about scheduling your next session and just play by post anytime you want. Download a Tabletop Town from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store today. We'll have the links in the corner or down below. As always, you get the adventure itself, but instead of that big hardcover book, you get a series of softcover booklets. You get a booklet each for the intro, chapter 1 and chapter 2, then chapters 3 and 4, chapters 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and finally you get the appendices, the bestiary, and the magic items. I do still wish that they were able to annotate the books directly in some way to draw your attention to the times in the adventure when you have in-world documents or art or maps that you can show your players. But based on conversations I've had with the folks at Beadle and Grimm's, I think that their licensing agreement with Wizards doesn't really allow them for changing or directly annotating the book or the adventure in any way, aside from splitting it into these little booklets. But they do give you this, the Legendary Edition Elements Quick Reference Guide. It breaks down by chapter all the things in the box that you can use for your sessions, including the area maps, the dungeon maps, the battle maps, the handouts, the artwork, the bonus encounters, the magic item cards, the encounter cards, and the minis. You don't get exact page numbers, which I think would probably be helpful for most things, but the items are generally listed in the order in which they appear. I still recommend doing an inventory as part of your session prep to ensure that you aren't missing an opportunity to use something in this box. There is nothing worse than realizing that you had a really cool battle map or an in-world document that you forgot to use. And of course, you also get the usual Beadle and Grimm's intro pamphlet as well, which gives you an overview of all the contents in the book. And I very much appreciate having this little handout, but I do wonder if there might be an even better way to help DMs with their session prep. If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments down below. If you're here, you are probably a fan of minis, and the set includes 3 Mind Flayer minis and 2 Intellect Devourers from WizKids. Interestingly, these are not the minis from the official WizKids Phandelver booster set that we reviewed up there in the eye right now, but they might look familiar because these are the minis in the Mind Flayer Voyage set that came out a couple of months ago from WizKids. You can see our review of that set in the eye up there now. Here are the Mind Flayer minis from that original set. It came with 2 unique Mind Flayer sculpts and an Ulatharid, and the Beadle and Grimm set here features 3 Mind Flayers, 2 of the same sculpt, but all with repainted robes. The Mind Flayer Voyage set also featured 4 Intellect Devourer minis in 2 different sculpts, and the Beadle and Grimm set here features 1 of each of them in the original paint scheme. Beadle and Grimm suggest using these 3 for the 3 Mind Flayer bosses in the adventure, which you can certainly do, but those Mind Flayers are kind of unique. One has like tentacles for arms, one has wings and a floating disc, and one has a severed head that he keeps as a pet. They do all have dedicated minis in that WizKids booster set though, but I don't think that anyone's going to complain about getting more Mind Flayer minis or more Intellect Devourer minis, especially Mind Flayers with really unique paint schemes like these. There are 3 different types of maps in this box: area maps, annotated dungeon maps, and battle maps. And they all come in this really nice little folio thing to keep them all safe. So let's start with those area maps. First, you have this nice big map of the Phandelver region printed on canvas. It's quite a nice map, but it does contain, well, not spoilers exactly, but it does show you the location of Wave Echo Cave among other quest locations, and the goal of the first part of the adventure is for the party to actually figure out the location of Wave Echo Cave. So this is ideally a GM Eyes only map. It's nice, and I'd still throw it up on my wall, but I'd have to tell my players that their characters don't actually have all this information yet. There is a player version of the map in the book, though. And then you have this quite interesting paper map that features the town of Phandelver and several of the dungeons that they'll explore throughout this adventure. I'll be honest, I don't really understand the point of this map. It's a big poster map that you don't really want to put on your wall because you certainly don't want your players to see it. It's not super helpful for the DM either, I think. I would rather this slot have gone to a nice big map of just Phandelver because I love Phandelver. But both of these maps are 21.5 inches by 30 inches. This next set of maps is quite useful though. You get 11 laminated dungeon maps that are annotated. You get the basic information of the dungeon, including the height of the ceilings and the status of the doors and the light levels, and sometimes even information about the ambiance, like the sounds or the smells there. Then they list each area of the dungeon along with the monsters and NPCs who show up there. Plus you get some treasures that show up in those areas as well, and even prominent features of the room, like the presence of difficult terrain or webs or collapsing bridges and things like that. These kinds of maps are really helpful when you're trying to run a dungeon efficiently without missing anything. And this is definitely a dungeon crawling adventure, especially that latter half. And it's a heck of a lot easier than flipping back and forth through your source book, especially if you've read through the dungeon during your prep. You get maps of Cragmaw Hideout, the Red Brand Hideout, the ruins of Thunder Tree, Cragmaw Castle, Wave Echo Cave, Zorzula's Rest, Talhundereth, the Crypt of the Talhund, Gibbet Crossing, Elithanok, and the Briny Maze. There's room on the back for notes, and since it's laminated, you can go ahead and write on it with your wet or dry erase markers, and they're also standard letter size. Now we get into the meat of it with a whopping 32 battle maps. These are folded battle maps designed to be plopped down on your table to use with your minis. Now you may be thinking, are there 32 dungeons in this adventure? And while it may sometimes feel that way, there are not. Making battle maps that would include an entire dungeon with 1-inch squares would require really huge maps. And not all of the rooms in a dungeon really require a battle map. So the maps we have here are often individual rooms where battles are likely to occur. One nice thing is that a lot of these maps feature original map art. For example, here's one of the maps included in the Beadle and Grimm's box next to the same section of the dungeon as illustrated in the book. One of my favorite things about these Beadle and Grimm's boxes is that they often jazz up the maps to make them more atmospheric without changing anything in the original adventure. Sometimes the B&G maps even include more of the written features of the room than the original maps do. The maps vary in size, but they're all double-sided and feature a nice satin texture to them. And they all fold up nicely into that 8.5 by 11 inch standard letter size so you can keep them in your nice included folio. So let's go through them quickly in roughly the order in which they appear. In Chapter 1, you get the Goblin Ambush and Cragmaw Hideout. In Chapter 2, you have Crevasse Cave. In Chapter 3, you have Old Owl Well, Wyvern Tor, the King's Quarters, Area C12 and C14. In Chapter 4, you have the Great Cavern, W9, the Collapsed Cavern, W17 and 18, and Temple of Dumathoin, W19. In Chapter 5, you get Well Cavern, Goblin Camp, Phandalin Alleys, Rooftop Stash, Vestibule and Mess Hall, Z2 and 3, and Indigo Sanctum. In Chapter 6, you get Marthugrim's Home, Hardy Hammer Mine, Crypts and Worship Hall, T17 through 21. In Chapter 7, you get Tunnels of the Deep, which is a bonus map. Grell Caves, J1 through 5. Bahir Lair, J6 and 7. Gibbering Grotto, J8 through 10. Experimentation Chamber, I10. Elderbrain Pool, I15. Crystal Pit, S2. And Gockulus's Lair, L7. And in Chapter 8, you get the Briny Pool, B22. Crystal Dome, Central Chamber. Empty Bridge and Around the Bridge. Yugoloth Battlefield. And Ilvash's Anima, which is a double map. The battle maps are one of the biggest selling points of these boxes. Not only do they enhance the experience of running the adventure, but they make GM prep so much easier. Not every single battle is included here, but a lot of them are, particularly the major ones. So these maps should really help save you a bunch of time and effort. Next up, we have a DM screen with custom art on the exterior here. You got some monsters here posing very nicely for us, including that Crystal Grick. And inside, we have an adventure-specific information with a region map, some random encounters, the character advancement track, and a list of important NPCs. I love the art on the outside here, but I think I would have chosen different information for the inside. Since this is an adventure really pitched at newer Dungeon Masters, I would have included those standard DM tables for conditions and vision and cover and all that. I don't think we need the region map and the area-specific random encounters. In my book, anything on a DM screen should be useful for the entire campaign. So I would have designed this differently, but every Dungeon Master is different and has different needs, so let me know what you think of it. This set comes with 19 in-world documents and pieces of bonus art that you can use during your adventure. These are always one of the main highlights of the Beadle and Grimm's boxes for me, and the more documents, the better. You get notes and drawings and letters, sketches, maps, journal pages, puzzles, and more than one cave painting. The quick reference guide that we talked about earlier will help you keep track of what to hand out when. But nothing is more fun as a player than being handed an authentic-looking journal page full of writing and sketches and clues to figure out. These are just fantastic, and Beadle and Grimm always does a stellar job at producing them. I'm happy to report that the bonus encounters included in this box do a lot to address some of the problems I had with the overall adventure, and they're just good encounters to begin with. There are 4 in total. Problem 1 with the adventure is that the adventure doesn't give your characters a ton of motivation to get them through the second half of the adventure. Essentially, several random NPCs are kidnapped from the town of Phandelver, and the PCs are asked to rescue them. But the people kidnapped aren't necessarily anyone the PCs have built any kind of relationship with. So as written, there's no personal reason for the PCs to want to go on this rescue trip. The first 2 little adventures here from Tales from the Warehouse present 3 townsfolk who will eventually be kidnapped, allowing the PCs the chance to get to know them first, so they might actually care when they go missing. In the first encounter, a ruinous search, a dwarf inventor named Nalpina needs help excavating a legendary set of ruins that she found the location of, called Diamant's Workshop. But unfortunately for her, it ends up being a kobold trap. It is a fun little encounter with a couple of interesting little twists, and I think it's a good or better little quest than a lot of the quests in the original book. If they rescue Nalpina, she'll stick around in the town and help the PCs. She can help build them little contraptions and inventions, including like this clockwork scout companion. It's pretty great. The second encounter is Hobgoblin Siege, in which you help 2 other townsfolk who are dealing with the Hobgoblin attack on a nearby Emerald Enclave outpost. This one is pretty combat heavy, if you enjoy that. It serves the 3 purposes of developing the Triboard Trail region, giving you an opportunity to work with the Emerald Enclave, and developing more NPCs that will eventually get kidnapped. Next up is my favorite chapter, Mine Management. The Lost Mine of Phandelver starter set adventure, which became the first half of this story, is all about the forgotten mine where magic items can be crafted. At the end of that adventure, the PCs get 10% ownership of it, which really just amounts to a little bit of passive income for them. But otherwise, the titular mine is never really brought up again. With this little chapter, you get lots of things that you can do with your mining business. You can install upgrades, negotiate rights with various factions to make use of the mine. You can enchant your own items. You can handle problems that crop up there. It is a great way to keep the mine relevant through the entire adventure. I wanted the mine to be the focal point of the entire story of Phandelver and Below, but this is a great consolation prize. And the fourth encounter is called Couple's Retreat. This encounter for third level characters introduces the idea of far realm corruption from the shards of the Annotated Obelisk that ends up being the driving force behind the second half of this adventure. It features two commoners who have, unbeknownst to the party of course, been taken over by intellect devourers named Pi and Fax, who are trying to get their little claws on a pair of tiny shards from the obelisk hidden inside rings in an old tomb. It is a fun little mini dungeon that gives you a nice foreshadowing of what's to come, on top of the presence of the psionically empowered goblins from the original adventure, and which helps further tie the first half of the adventure to the second. All in all, once again, the team at Beadle and Grimm's have done a great job. They've knocked it out of the park with these bonus adventures here, which are fun in and of themselves and which also go a long way on improving the original adventure. One day, I'd love to see them just make a Beadle and Grimm's companion book to an adventure full of encounters like this that fill the holes of the original story. Great job here as always. So these are lovely, and I hope that they're going to be selling them individually. These are quite large faction pins from the main D&D factions. You have the Emerald Enclave, the Harpers, the Lord's Alliance, the Order of the Gauntlet, and the Zentarum. They're more like brooches, really. They're really large. They have two butterfly clutches on the back. The trouble is if your players all want to join the Harpers, for instance. It looks like at least some of them are already available on the Beadle and Grimm's website for about $20 a pop if you need to get extras, or if you just want the pins and nothing else from this set. These are the best looking faction pins that I've seen yet. You can go on Etsy and find some others if you want to shop around. And these are also pretty great for cosplaying. Using the hardware slot in this campaign for faction pins that you can use in any Forgotten Realms campaign is a pretty great idea. As is tradition, we are getting 60 new encounter cards with this set, featuring the creatures and NPCs who appear in this adventure. Everything from standard creatures like the zombie, the roper, and the bugbear, to specific characters like Glassstaff, Nesnar, and the Mindflayer clairvoyant big bads. They feature the art on the front, and on the back they have the stats and the lore and the role-playing information that you need so that you can plop it over your GM screen and have access to all the information you need while the players get to see the creature art. Beadle and Grimm's does sell standalone monster encounter card packs if you do enjoy these. I'd love to see them also design a big box in order to organize them, maybe with little alphabetical dividers. But these are a great little additional GM tool for your adventures. You also get a deck of 46 magic item cards in a handy little tuck box. A couple of them include some item art, and a few of them are long enough to be double-sided. Otherwise, the other side just says magic item on it. And when your party discovers a magic item in the adventure, you get to hand them the corresponding card. And the elements reference page that we talked about earlier helps you know when you have a card to hand out. If you have never played with reference cards like this, don't underestimate how much more satisfying it is to be handed a shiny card with your hard-earned loot on it, rather than just be told about what it is and then jot it down on the spreadsheet and have to go look it up later. Cards like this go a long way to making a campaign more fun. Trust me, I use reference cards like these all the time. And of course, if you like reference cards, let me take this moment to thank our other sponsor for this video, Hit Point Press. The deck of many animated 5e reference cards can bring even more magic to your games, and they make fantastic gifts. Get animated spell cards, condition cards, or townsfolk NPCs. You can even get in-game items like the Deck of Illusions and the Deck of Many Things. And we're making brand new custom spells to pair with their Animated Spellcraft Volume 1 deck. This week, check out Elemental Fists. Give your brawler a little extra magical oomph with the damage type of your choice. Download the free spells today at gallantgoblin.com/spellcraft and get the Spellcraft Volume 1 deck using our link in the corner or in the doohickey down below. The artwork from the book has been pulled out onto these little sheets so that you can more easily share them with your players. Typically, players don't get to see the art in a book unless you try to hold the book up for them to see and you hope they don't see all the spoilers. Here, you can just plop it over your DM screen so that they can enjoy it as well. You get 42 half-page art pieces in total. You can find chapter and page numbers listed here on the back, and they're also included for you on the quick reference guide so that you can organize them during your session prep. It's one of those little simple things that is easy to overlook in these Beadle and Grimm's boxes, but I really do enjoy getting to more easily share all this really cool art with the players during my sessions. We also get a couple of DM aids to help you with your campaign planning, and a couple of player aids as well this time. The DM story tracker here is really just a nice sheet of double-sided paper with some headers and places to jot down a couple of notes. And there's a couple of little check boxes here to track some of those chapter-specific objectives. And then you get this little player thing. It's a double-sided pamphlet thing that allows your players to take some notes during their adventures. And there's 4 copies here, but they're all on one sheet of large double-sided paper. So first you'd have to cut it in half to get 2 sheets, and then basically you're going to have to make copies if you want all 4 players at your table to have a copy. And there's nothing Phandelver specific about that piece of paper. You could pretty much use it to track notes in any adventure that you're running. And finally, you get this nice little character creation sheet that your players can use when they're designing their characters for this campaign. It gives you basic backstories for some of the regular backgrounds in the adventure, and that will allow players to more closely tie themselves into the story. And this is just reproduced from the book. And when you complete the campaign, you have this really nice and heavy completion coin that you can display in a prominent place to celebrate your victory or commiserate your defeat, whatever you like. I would say that this is a classic Beadle and Grimm set. Nothing super crazy, just those excellent bread and butter pieces that I like so much. There's no custom pre-gen characters this time, but the custom encounters are top-notch, and the plethora of battle maps are really going to help when you're trying to run this dungeon-heavy adventure. Now, like I said, these sets are expensive, so I definitely recommend going in as a group. The Phandelver and Below Legendary Edition here is available now for $349. If you have 4 players and a game master, you can each chip in $70 to get it, which is basically the cost of a new AAA video game. And I think most of you would agree that a great D&D campaign is a lot more memorable and a lot more hours and more meaningful than your typical video game. And here's a secret for you from my history as a psychologist. If you get your players to chip in money in the beginning, they're going to be much more invested in your campaign, meaning that they're more likely to show up at your sessions and stick around to the end. No matter if you get this particular box or not, I will always recommend getting your players to chip in at the start of a campaign and maybe at regular intervals while you play. Dungeon Masters spend a lot of money on minis and terrain and maps and more to give their players a great experience, and they deserve to be compensated for that. Plus, as I said, it gets the players invested too. So let me know what you think about this set in the comment section down below. Next up from Beadle and Grimm's is a Magic the Gathering inspired murder mystery game called Murders at Karlov's Manor: The Case of the Three-Blade Knife. I don't know if we're on the press list for this one, but I'm super curious about it, so I may reach out to them about it. If you want to hear our review of that one, let me know, and I'll see what I can do to make that happen. That one is landing later this month, January 2024. If you'd like to help us make more content, please support our sponsors. You can download the Tabletop Town app from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store to play your favorite TTRPGs by post, anytime, anywhere. And you can get some amazing adventure-enhancing accessories at Hit Point Press using our links down below. Also, come join us each Wednesday night at 8:30 Eastern as we play the social deduction game Blood on the Clock Tower, live on YouTube and Twitch, along with other D&D and Pathfinder creators, plus comedians and streamers and game designers, and the occasional general. Finally, you can adopt your own customizable little kobold plushie like this guy over here at heroplush.com and get an accessory pack or 2 to make them the class of your choice. You can find us on social media at one of the sites over here, and you can get our weekly releases of new 5e magic items and monsters like these in the Bonfire Bite series on Instagram or on our subreddit at r/thegallantgoblin, and those are completely free. Thank you for watching all the way to the end here. I very much appreciate it. If you are still here, leave me a comment down below asking for a Beadle and Grimm's edition of something completely random, like a legendary box set of the Golden Girls. Let's just really confuse the comment section. I'll see you there. But for now, please stay safe, stay warm, have fun, love each other, and I will see you next time at the Gallant Goblin.